Hi, it's Evaleen here. I'm going to just talk about a scenario that we went through at last night's webinar on best strategies for supporting autistic kids and teens socially. And I'm going to be doing some of this on our social media anyway for the next week or so. And thank you to everybody who's commented and sent us messages about, how helpful you're finding this. Because look, it's a bit of a minefield for a lot of us. For parents, for practitioners who are like, what do I do now? I can't teach social skills and I thought I was doing the right thing. And it's a big change for everybody. And I totally get that. And, I've been through this journey for the past 10 years. So I'm here to help people out. And I suppose, and what I love is actually discussing things, because even last night when we were going through the scenario, something else dawned on me. And I'll mention that at the end, I think. I'll leave that bit to the end. So basically, here's a typical scenario. Like when people talk about social mistakes or social errors that are made by autistic people. So scenario is Kyle is telling Joe about the football match that they watched last night. Joe keeps looking around and checking their watch, but Kyle keeps talking. Now, this is a scenario taken from someone who's teaching social skills to autistic kids. And the idea is, of course, the autistic is to blame. Kyle is autistic. Kyle's just taken over the conversation. Kyle just keeps talking. Kyle doesn't notice the social cues. Kyle just wants to monopolize the conversation. Kyle lacks empathy. Kyle can't understand other people's viewpoints. So therefore, Joe is right to kind of walk away from Kyle, and we need to teach Kyle how to interact properly with people, or appropriately. So that's the understanding that's kind of out there, and it's really basic. Okay, and when people have a little bit of knowledge, or they're just following a social skills program without actually thinking about it, and when they're not looking at that everything that's going on in the world that affects how we come to meet each other, social skills, and how we come into social communication, because I don't really like the word social skills. I only started using it because everyone else was. When we interact with each other, these are the two people, so much more has happened before that interaction takes place. And we have no way of knowing what's gone on in this person's life, or that person. Even if we know them so well and have lived with them for 30 years, or a part of our family, we still don't know what that person's full story is. So what we're doing is we're making assumptions and guessing, okay? And we're mapping stuff onto each other as well, right? There's a whole ton of stuff that happens when people interact. So it's really simplistic, overly simplistic, and really basic to start at that point. So what we do is we have to zoom out, and we have to start looking at things from other angles, and we have to start looking at things in lots of different ways, because when we do that, we actually see lots of different points, and we see a fuller picture. And it means we actually come to meet not just Kyle, but Joe's needs too, in a much better way, And there is no formula. There's no do this, do that, teach them this. We're talking about human beings, okay? So what we need to do is have compassion. We need to understand what we're doing, and we need to deal with our core beliefs and all the stuff that we believe about autism and about human communication, and start looking, I suppose, within ourselves as well, and what we already know as human beings. So Kyle is telling Joe about the football match they watched last night. Joe keeps looking around and checking their watch, but Kyle keeps talking. So in the last video I did a couple of days ago, I talked about social cues being different in different cultures and different contexts. And it's not that autistic people can't see the other person or doesn't care about the other person doing these movements. It's just that if an autistic person is moving about, it might mean we're listening. So we're getting a different message, okay? So that's one of the things. The other thing is, straight off, we are blaming one person for this miscommunication. Human communication is not perfect. We miscommunicate all the time. Doesn't matter what your neurotype is. Doesn't matter. How many times have you spent agonizing over text a friend sent you going, what do they mean by this? Or someone misinterpreted something you said. We do this all the time. And because we're not living in a society where we are looking and, taught to consider what miscommunication is and what happens in that situation, and to check in with each other, we meet each other with judgment, and we map stuff onto people that just shouldn't even be part of that interaction. So in this situation, we're starting at a point where Kyle is wrong again, because the autistic is always wrong, because the autistic is the defective person. So it's Kyle's wrong, and Kyle needs to be taught how to interact with Joe and other people. So we could ask, well, why didn't Joe just say directly to Kyle that he had enough about hearing about a football match? Why did that not happen? Because if we ask that question, we then have to look at our worldview and our society and why we don't communicate directly with people. And why aren't we doing this stuff? And why are we blaming each other? And why are we walking away from interactions annoyed with the other person when we could have had a beautiful conversation instead, a beautiful connection? Why are we doing this? And that's a harder conversation to have, and it's far more detailed and it takes more time. So it's much easier to go, autistic is to blame, let's just teach them some stuff. We had some other scenarios, like why is someone not being direct? But we also have to ask, why is Kyle, who's obviously really interested in football, why is he talking about the football match so much? Because it's really special to him. He really enjoyed it, and he wants to share that sense of joy with Joe. Okay, that's one reason. As I said in the other video, some of us take a long time to explain stuff because that's how our internal language works, and to verbalize things, we don't like leaving out details, and we might feel like we're lying to someone if we leave out a detail. Plus, we're afraid sometimes to leave out details because we've been accused of things so many times in our life, and we're trying to defend all our everything all of the time. So then you have to look, that's the trauma-informed approach. That's where you start going, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on here. So the assumption that the autistic just doesn't know what they're doing and needs to be taught, is wrong in so many ways. And of course, the idea is that, well, if you tell Kyle to behave like this, and if you tell Kyle to let everyone else decide what Kyle does, then Kyle will be left into the group, and then Kyle will be happier. And I suppose what hit me last night was, but in all these social error scenarios, in all this decades of talking about social skills and all the programs that are out there, why has nobody asked this question? Why has nobody said, but why can't we help both these people? And what is Joe missing out on? Joe, who's not autistic, has just walked away from Kyle and may never talk to Kyle again. Joe's missing out on this beautiful relationship he could have with Kyle, maybe a fantastic friendship, this beautiful person that they could have something with, and that's never discussed. And then you see, I had a good thing today. I was like, why is that never discussed? And I went, oh yeah, because the autistic is the problem. We're seen as worthless, like we wouldn't have value to add. Like it wouldn't be a tragedy that the autistic person is excluded for the other people. Like they're not missing out at all. That's not even a conversation people are having. Isn't that shocking? And as autistics, we're kind of so used to that, so used to being dismissed and not mattering. I didn't even see that. So we were discussing this last night and I was like, oh my God. People aren't asking that question. People don't even see us that way. That they're also missing out. Like the world deserves to see autistics as we should be, not traumatized versions of ourselves. The world deserves that too. We deserve it, and so does the world, but that's not a conversation anyone's having. What's everyone missing out on by excluding autistics? That's the conversation that needs to be had. At least a really important part of it. Not Kyle is being excluded, so how do we teach him to fit in with everyone else so Kyle feels better because everyone else likes him? What's everyone else missing out on by not getting to know the real Kyle? And it's time we started to get to know autistic people for who we really are, not masked versions of ourselves, not trained versions of ourselves. And we need to look at human communication for what it really is. It's not perfect at all. And why we're pretending that there's social skills and social rules and standard ways of communicating across the world when there just aren't, I have no idea.